do you think that we can start? It's 3:05, so
Yeah.
I think that it's time for us to start. And I would like to say good afternoon, everybody. For me, it's a true pleasure to welcome you to this conversation that we've titled Cartografías de la enseñanza, ¿sí? El docente de inglés como agente de cambio ante la incertidumbre pedagógica. Today we aren't just here to talk about how to teach grammar or vocabulary, but we are here because our professional maps, right, are changing. Our educational landscape, where knowledge construction evolves faster than our textbooks, right, the course books we use, we face a vital question. And that question is, are we simply applying prepackaged recipes, or are we brave enough to become the architects of our own classroom realities? To help us navigate these waters, we'll be exchanging ideas and concepts with my three colleagues here from the CCC. The CCC is the Ciclo Complementario Curricular. Es un programa de la Universidad Pedagógica. Our aim is to look at the classroom through critical lens. So I would like my colleagues to introduce yourself very briefly. Would you do that?
Well, I'm Claudia Tilatti. I'm an English and kindergarten teacher and a teacher trainer. I work in the field. I love to investigate about inclusive teaching, learning, and assessment. And at UNIPE, I tutor courses on tasks, project work, problem solving, clinical, and literature in language teaching.
Yeah. Okay. Something else, Claudia?
No.
Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Pablo Labandeira. Everybody calls me Paul ever since I was a kid. And I am a teacher and a teacher trainer, and I have been a teacher trainer for over 40 years, 30 years in public schools, but 40 years privately. But in my whole career, I focused on methodology in course and materials design. And at UNIPE, I am in charge of Beyond Methods in the first year of the licenciatura. And then I teach levels 1 and 3 of English in other courses. I do some research for my own, and I have done research for some groups and some people who are here and to whom I thank for the opportunity. And I've learned a lot, so I'm very happy and grateful to have shared that experience with them. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ru?
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, my name is Ruben Mazzei. I am a teacher of English and of English literature and a translator, and I have specialized in linguistics as well. At the licenciatura, I teach a seminar called Discourse Analysis, and in first year, the Taller de Investigación 1, which is research. We will be talking about this later on, but is research based on specific classrooms and by teachers themselves. So well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, welcome all of you and welcome the audience. I'm just going to say some words about me. Most of you know me, right? I'm a teacher and a teacher educator at several institutions and universities here in Argentina. At present, I'm part of this wonderful, I have to say, wonderful team of professionals working together to implement the different courses of studies at the CCC or the Ciclo Complementario Curricular at UNIPE. It's really a pleasure to work with them and also to work with some of you, the ones who are here listening to us, in other places, right, of this profession, which is teaching. our proposal today is challenging, right? Because we always say that we want to move away from a purely technical or standardized stance towards what Kumaravadivelo defines as post-method pedagogy, right? This is what Pablo mostly teaches at the CCC, and also what Van Leer describes as ecological perspective, which it's a line that goes across all the curriculum. During this informal talk, we will be exploring the pillars of particularity, practicality, and possibility. This isn't about finding or trying to find magic bullets, but about empowering ourselves as agents of change through exploratory action research, which is Ruben's specialty, right? This is about inhabiting the classroom. It's about observing reflectively, and it's about designing interventions that are situated, inclusive, and responsive to our local context. This is something that we are all the time talking about in different training courses, in different classrooms. I will be acting as a kind of moderator today. And to make this a true dialogue, we need your input, the audience input, right? So please feel free to drop your questions into the chat at any moment. I'll be trying to keep an eye, a close eye on the feed, but as I'm also, I'll be paying attention to what my colleague said, right? I'll be trying to curate your thoughts, so at the end we can explore and answer your queries together during the end of the discussion, okay? Mm-hmm. Your perspective, I mean, the audience, what the audience tells us, what our colleagues on the other side of the screen tell us is, I think, is the final piece of this puzzle, right? So let's start building this cartography right now, okay? What do you think? Shall we start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what we are going to do today is to start by looking at a concept that we think every one of us has grappled with, even if we didn't have a name for it, right? And that is the concept of teacher agency. We want to unpack the theory behind this first, but I think that we need to define the term. So, Claudia, would you like to help me, right? And start here. What does agency actually look like in the classroom for you? What can you tell us?
Okay. Well, when we hear the word agency, first we think of autonomy or independence or holding our ground. But in fact, in teaching, agency is not something we simply possess, but is something that we can achieve in practice. It's not just the way we are or a personality trait. It's not an act of rebellion, okay? It's rather a professional stance grounded in reflection, responsibility, and basically informed decision-making.
Okay, yeah, I love that idea that you mentioned, the idea of agency as a professional stance, right? Because we are professionals. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about informed decisions, the idea of taking informed decisions, we have to ask what is informing them, right? Okay. So does this mean that having agency is actually the prerequisite for method? Now we are going to start talking about the method, right? Into a more localized. What do you think about this?
Okay, we lost you a little bit, but I think that if we are moving beyond the method, beyond these fixed prescriptions and ready-made solutions, I think we have to ask ourselves if we are just implementers of curricular designs or professionals that are capable of adapting those designs to a real context, to a real students. Well, we know that Kumaradivelu states that teaching must respond to, well, these three words: particularity, practicability, and possibility. And this means our decisions have to be situated, okay? They have to account for local contexts and focus on what is pedagogically relevant, significant, and socially transformative for our real students.
Okay, now there is one thing. We've all been taught the method. Happens at the institutes where, or at the universities where we start with our education as teachers. So we've been taught the method. So if we could break one rule from these traditional ELT methods today, right, to better serve our students, what would that be? What do we
But I think that if we speak about the method, it would be as speaking of the cartography. And there's one reason why we have called this talk Cartographies, because the way is not marked, right? It's not only one. So probably the rule that I would not break is the rule that states that there are no rules when it comes to teaching methods, right? Because each and every method is the result of a time. It has been begotten in a particular context, and contexts change all the time. So the new rule would be: look around, listen, explore, get to know your students, your cartography, and then take a little bit from every method you know and put all those bits together and make them fit your context. That is what we know as informed eclecticism. This is the second time the word informed appears in a very short time. But this is informed eclecticism. And from an ecological perspective, as Van Leer reminds us, classrooms are living systems, and every interaction, every choice shapes the environment where learning happens.
Okay. Wait a minute, because there are several things that I would like to point out from what you said. First of all, this idea of the ecosystem, right? It's a great imagery, right? Thinking our classroom as an ecosystem, like a jungle, a desert, a coral reef, a mountain, right? So that's great. But for a teacher to be truly eclectic in an informed way, as you pointed out, and also Claudia pointed out, they need a way to gather information. They need to know what is actually happening in their specific living system or ecosystem. So I think that this is where Ruben needs to clarify some things. Help us, please, here. Because I think that this is where exploratory action research comes in, isn't it? It's not just about solving a problem immediately, but about exploring the classroom to see what's really going on under the surface. So, Ru, what can you add to this?
Well, yes, and when observing our classrooms, there are, as you mentioned, different perspectives, different methods. We may consider teacher agency as well, for example, as Claudia and Paul mentioned before. And another perspective is the one called exploratory action research, which is also known as teacher research or classroom-based research. And this is a note on this. Unlike formal research, teacher research is considered a bottom-up approach, which starts with the teachers themselves in their own specific classrooms, right? So this means that it is the teacher, yes, in their specific classrooms that decide on a problem, a concern, an issue they want to explore, and and in this way they proceed, yes, in the stages of exploratory action research. In the case of the Taller de Investigación 1, the one I facilitate in the first year, and let me clarify this, which I think it makes sense. It is the first year, yes, for students. So it's a good way to start with this approach of teachers doing research themselves. In this way, yes, I mean, not the formal research, but a very, very specific research, because, I mean, in a way, I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's less time consuming, and it points right to their specific context, their specific classrooms, right? And their specific students as well. Yes, well, you were talking about the particularities and etc. Yes, so so in this type of research, then teachers find, yes, a problem, an issue, a concern, and then they ask their research questions, and then they see how they can explore their classrooms, which instruments, for example. Then they are guided on how to collect data and analyze data evidence, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, I would say that this approach, well, this is implemented in different communities, in the community of MentorNet, which is Mentoring Teacher Research Network, which is a network worldwide, yes, where teachers from different countries carry out this research. Mm-hmm. But it has proved significant because of this, because it's for teachers, yes, who have adopted this way of research in their classrooms, yes, and because it is, as I said before, bottom-up. Bottom-up means the teachers themselves in their own specific classrooms, and not top-down. I mean, a formal research, and I read about it, and then I see how someone else investigated applies to my classroom. That's also okay. Yeah? There are different ways to. That's
completely different.
Yes, yeah. A different perspective. Yes. So in this way, also teachers can theorize their own practice. Yes. All right. So they can see how the theory about methods, or methods in the plural, can be applied in their own classrooms, but also how from a problem they identify, they can also start building up theory and knowledge. Yes. So this, I think, this also is connected with teacher agency, in the sense that it gives teachers this sense of achievement, yeah, mm-hmm. and that they can do, that they can carry out research themselves, yes, and not academics, scholars, or university teachers, right? Mm-hmm. So I find this way,
okay.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about it. I don't know if to say a disadvantage, but teachers work within institutional constraints, right? And they need to follow certain rules, certain, let's say, we belong to communities of practice and institutional, let's say, laws or norms, right? So our agency, the concepts of agency and exploratory action research, is still possible within these institutional constraints?
Yes, I think that they are, absolutely. Agency does not mean working outside the system. We are all working within a system. We work under curricular frameworks, policies, and we have time limitations. We work in different schools with different rules, But still, every day, we have to make decisions on how to design a class, how to frame a text, how to design a task, how to respond to a student's comment, how to interpret a guideline. And that's student agency, okay?
Yeah,
How
I
we
think,
position ourselves in that situation within this system and taking into account time constraints, policies, curricular designs.
yeah, because more often than never, we tend to perceive our classroom as a shuttle that is located within a bigger space, right? Only connected to that space through a weak cable that just keeps the classroom in its place. Yet a classroom is an integral part of a larger living entity, which is the school. And the school is a vital organ of another ecosystem that is the community. And this community, the neighborhood around the school itself, all of them suffer changes every day. And it is impossible to think of our classroom as a space protected from this where things happen in an isolated manner. Rather, it is completely affected and changed by the metamorphosis outside it. So planning should also consider this ecosystem dimension when it comes to deciding what curriculum to apply, right? Can you recall, can you think of any time when you noticed how vulnerable your teaching context was? And then what did you do about that? And that is when the ecosystem comes into place.
Okay. I think that I don't know. Are you listening to me? Can you hear me? Because okay, perfect. I think we need to add another layer, right, to this. I would ask, how does teacher agency relate to student agency? I like what you said, Paul, this metaphor of a shuttle located within a bigger space, only connected, as you said, something of a cable or whatever. But the idea is, what about our students who are within that shuttle, that ecosystem? And I think that this is what we need to think about now, right? What happens to our students, right? Paul, can you can you go on with that?
Well, what happens to students is that they also change, right? And I think that this is when exactly exploratory action research comes into play, because we as teachers need to observe what changes are going on both outside and inside our classroom in order to make informed decisions, right? And this information will come from that ecosystem, right? We are within the constraints of an institution, but then the institution also needs to consider that the English classroom is part of the institution. And sometimes what happens is that the English classroom is considered like a space where children just speak gibberish, right? And they just play and sing and the things, right? But it's hardly ever considered part of school projects, for example. And interdisciplinarity has a lot to do with that as well. And I think that probably students will be benefited from teachers being able to work together and to understand that each and every one of them is part of that ecosystem, and that every action they do, every step they take towards finishing a project or transmitting an idea or completing a task should include that ecosystem.
Okay. Claudia, I think that we lost you a minute ago, and I don't know if we've lost you again.
She's here.
Claudia, can you listen to us?
Yes.
Because I introduced the
I'm here.
topic.
Yes. Okay.
We were discussing, and now I introduced another layer. I said the idea of teacher agency related to students, right? So Paul gave us her his position, and what can you say about this, right?
Well, you know that they are teachers agency and students agency are totally interconnected. Okay, we model critical thinking, reflection, and also intentional decision making. And when we do that, our students learn to do the same. And when we take ownership of our own professional choices, in a way and in time, students will begin to take ownership of their own learning. Okay, so in a way, teachers' agency creates the conditions and the right atmosphere for students' agency to come up. Okay, to appear, and okay.
No, I was just thinking that it sounds like a cycle, right? A cycle of empowerment. If the teacher agency creates the conditions for student agency, then the importance of exploratory action research, right, is great.
Well, that is what we call leading by example, right? And
That's it.
Yeah, I guess that lead by example is a good idea to take into account here, because observation plays the biggest role. And just as we model our observation skills, we are students. They will replicate these skills when they are given a task, right? In the same way as we work to make thinking visible, remember this idea of making thinking visible, so we should make agency replicable in every little task that we assign students. In every task that must be done, problem-solving strategies should be evident and elicited from students, right? A little bit more in every instance. Asking them to be more participative, like every time a little bit freer and probably more independent, right? A bit more of an agent at every step. So progressively, agency will be developed. It won't happen overnight, right? And the frustration associated with not getting immediate results is another issue that we should tackle in our everyday work. We have students who want immediate results. They want overnight answers, and agency is not built in one day. So we need to work a lot on that as well.
No, I would like to say something else, because there are a lot of ideas, right, that you are putting forward. But I feel that what we've been saying helps to show that exploratory action research or teacher research isn't just a straight line, because you said, solutions won't happen overnight, right? Whatever we do in the classroom, whatever we expect, changes won't happen overnight. So there is this cycle that starts with understanding before changing. So my feeling is that what we are talking about, this process, humanizes the teacher, because it shows that the teacher doesn't have all the answers, that we are exploring alongside the students. So it also empowers students, right? It frames students' agency, as Claudia pointed out, not as a gift given by the teacher, but as a result of a shared evidence-based classroom culture, right? It's this idea of humanizing our task as professionals of education. But I think we don't need to forget that students are at the center of this cycle, right? So, Ruben, would you like to add something else here?
Yes, and thanks for bringing students into this conversation as well, because it's not just us teachers.
That's it. They are the most important.
We are teachers because there are students also. Yeah. Okay. So that's why if our focus is just on us, yes, that would be an incomplete picture, right? So we have to consider always both sides, yes, of course, and the institution, but in the classrooms, the interaction is between teachers and students. And in the same way that, the views on methods, materials, practices have changed a long time, yes, throughout time, so have our students' roles, yes. So we are constantly adapting to the new generations, let's say, yes. So it's good to integrate them in the classroom in this ecological view, yes, so that they are really part of the teaching and learning process, yes. Well, you mentioned Paul, Claudia, and Anna, student agency, yes, and I think this because of this, this phrase is key, this concept is key, yes, as well, because it moves the focus of from knowledge, yes, that is what we have to teach, what students have to learn, yes, to the focus also on the knowers. And the knowers here are the students, yes. Generally, we may place a lot of attention to knowledge, yes, what I have to teach, what students have to learn, but also in the process, yes, there are these interactions in the classrooms where knowers, as Carl Mayton calls them, yes, is key, yes. So I am referring here briefly to a perspective I follow, which is legitimation code theory.
Yes. You have to enlarge, right, on that, because we don't know anything about it, right?
Yeah. But basically, this is the legitimation code theory is a sociological perspective, which places a lot of emphasis on not just on knowledge building, but also on knowers, yes, okay, the importance of considering those who know as well and how they do it, yeah. So in this sense, there are different dimensions in this theory, but one of them is specialization, yes, and this dimension works with two codes. By the way, this Carl Mayton from the University of Sydney builds the theory on the premises of Basil Bernstein, the British linguist and sociologist, and Pierre Bourdieu. So the codes here are called epistemic relations and social relations. And yes, and as I mentioned before, it has to do with this idea of the relationship between the knowers and the object of study, yes, but also the relationships that are built up in between the participants, in this case, the teacher and the students. So coming back to exploratory action research, there have been many research, yes, in relation to integrating students in the teacher research process as well. Yeah, so students becoming researchers as well with the guide of the teacher. Yeah, so this, I think that this humanizes teaching and learning in a way.
That's it. That's it. You know what, Ru, I think that we would need another session for legitimation code theory, right?
Yes,
in order to understand these epistemic relationships, the knowledge and the social relations, the knowers, but they're very interesting. So we promised to do something, right? Perhaps in July, in the winter version of the Semana Virtual de UNIPE, right? We can prepare something, right, about that. And as you said, going back to teacher research, right? Exploratory action research. Once as teachers, we explored and we've gathered our data and we discussed this with students, and how do we move into strategic reformulation? how does a teacher take what they learned or what we've learned from what we said before, this ecosystem, like the coral reef, the mountain, the jungle, the desert, according to what we experience? How do we move from that ecosystem and turn it into a truly innovative lesson that breaks the mold, that breaks the method that we are so kind of ingrained, right? We have it ingrained in our brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the key stages in exploratory action research is precisely analyzing data and reflecting on it. Yeah? And also an important question is, well, how shall I do it next time? How shall I explore this issue next time? Or what should be different? Yes. So there's a lot of post research reflection, let's say, and by revisiting the data, the research, yes, and reflecting on how I should continue next time. So I think it's a way of a cyclical process. Well, yes, with all the inherent dynamics of the classroom and student interaction, right? So you mentioned to turn the data into a truly innovative lesson. Well, teacher research paves the way, yes, for this, because it allows teachers to innovate in relation to the problem, to the concern they identify, and create their own way to teach and for their students to learn in their classes. Yes, so the result is innovation. Yes, by this particular teacher in this particular classroom as well, and with those particular students. So I think there's innovation because something new comes up after the research. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And one more thing, right? And let's say this is to the three of you. Let's see who wants to go on. But because of everything that you've said, what does it actually feel like to unlearn? Because everything that we've been saying is like, okay, we need to observe, analyze, talk with our students in order to change, to improve, to better our lessons, our classrooms are okay. But we've been taught a technique, right, at the TTCs, right, at the institute. So how does it actually feel to unlearn, to deconstruct that technical security? Because this, I guess that this is what we find, this is what we find in the classroom when we observe classics, right? So we need to deconstruct that technical security. So is this shift to a critical, to a more situated practice an easy one? Or does it require a certain level of comfort with uncertainty or discomfort?
Well, may I start?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, Anna, you mentioned to unlearn the technical security. I mean, the technical security that methods give us, yes? So if I follow, I don't know, a certain approach, methodology, etc., I am safe because I follow those stages, yes? In the teaching sequence, in the project, etc. Yeah. So this is, I mean, this is not wrong, right?
Sure.
But maybe if we want to develop, I mean, professionally as teachers as well, and to continue unlearning. I like this verb, yes, to unlearn, yes, because it means that something that we have already learned, we have to think about that in a different way, yes. So that's a new perspective, a new vision on a certain topic or method or theory, right? So I think it's this brings us to the idea of, well, the post methods, yes. I mean, not just casarnos con un método, yes.
That's it.
I am code switching, right? But the idea of well, reflecting on the different possibilities the methods offer, yes, and seeing how we can, well, integrate one, two or more methods in our specific context, because it helps us. It helps me as a teacher, and it helps also to my students learning. So maybe, well, I mentioned before the theory, legitimation co-theory. So when I came across this theory back in, I think it was in 2007, and Paul, I was with Paul in the Congreso de...
In Mendoza, wasn't it in Mendoza?
Yes, Systemic Functional...
Systemic Functional Linguistics Congress in Mendoza.
The University of Cuyo in Mendoza.
That's it.
And Carl Mayton, the father of the theory, was there, and he presented the theory. And then I went back home and Googled it, and I got... I mean, it called my attention the way that this theory views knowledge building and cumulative knowledge building as well, right? And also the relationship, not just the focus on knowledge, but also on knowers, yes? So, and what is legitimized, yes, depending on what we observe on our focus. So that was my experience, yes? I saw the teaching and learning in a different way. So I think that this means, this is an example, yes, of how to unlearn that technical security that a method can offer. That is in my case, but maybe Claudia, you may add something else about unlearning, yeah?
Your mic, Claudia. Turn on your mic. There,
right there. I would say that in this case, unlearning is like starting to trust your own professional judgment. Obviously, well, the knowledge of your students and their context, because we know that, you know, teaching is always situated and every classroom is different. And I think that agency begins there, when teachers observe, they listen, they make decisions, they adapt materials, having in mind the real students and the real context and the real classrooms where they teach.
And I think that unlearning also requires, I don't know if you can hear me better now, perhaps.
Yes, we listen to you perfectly.
Okay, good. I changed the mic. No, I was thinking that unlearning requires a great deal of self-assurance, right? We need to be very self-assured when it comes to unlearn something. We need to feel we are strong enough to go against the tide, to question everything we have been taught without having to go to someone else for advice. Trust our own devices, trust our context, our students, trust the amount of knowledge we have gained in all our trajectory as academics. And I think that it is much easier to unlearn something when you know where you're going, who you are, and what you are as a teacher. So I think that there is a kind of individual knowledge that each teacher needs to work upon in order to know themselves, right? And be sure, instead of replicating something just because it's safe, just because it worked in the past, because it won't work anymore. We are in a different time.
Especially nowadays,
exactly.
Right? Especially in our context, which is so complex,
Things change daily.
And talking about our present time, the current situation, one word that it's also related to this uncertainty that we are living is the word inclusive, right? And inclusion as a kind of, I see it or I feel it as a kind of buzzword. So I think that we need to ask ourselves, how is it, or how do we take a post method approach, focusing on a special local ecosystem, how does this actually make our classrooms more equitable for students who might be left behind by standardized global methods, right? So I would like to kind of talk about a little bit more about this idea of inclusion in our classrooms, right? And what to do with this concept nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, thanks for bringing this key.
I'm just giving you some, right? First teachers, then students, now inclusion, right? Little by little, we change topics.
Yes, but inclusion is a key word, yes, that has to be carefully, I mean, it has to be respected, let's say, yes. It's not just inclusion, yes, but as in all aspects of education, yes, inclusion must be planned and implemented carefully, yes, according to each specific context. Yes, it is not just letting students be in the classroom. Yes, that would be just physical inclusion. Yes, as sometimes happens, right? It's not just, well, you are in 6th grade, then that's okay. Yes, you are there. No, it's not just being there. Yes, it's more. It is far more than that. Yes, in the sense that is, as we mentioned before, giving students agency, integrating students so that they really learn, yes, and so that they become independent and autonomous learners as well, yeah. So again, it is not just being in the classroom, yes, it is doing and developing, yeah. They are our students doing and our students developing themselves, yes. That is how I see inclusive classrooms, yes. Yeah. So we must be cautious about it. Yes, inclusion means inclusion in students' learning and critical thinking, and in their developing soft skills and developing their agency, yes, so that they are prepared, yes, to face the world, the real world, beyond the walls of the classrooms, yes. And here, and I connect this strongly with the word accountability.
That's it.
It is a word used in education as well, which means the translation is, I don't know if it is difficult, but it could be translated as rendir cuentas, okay? So an institution has to rendir cuentas, yes, account for their students' learning.
That's it.
Students' learning and account for their teachers' teaching, yes, as well. So if not, is pretending, okay? Is pretending that teachers are teaching, pretending that students are learning, and pretending that institutions are a place, schools are a place where students go to learn. So,
yeah, progressive institutions with this inclusion label, right?
Yes, or in general, yes, yeah. all education in general, yes. So learning inclusion should be
that's
there.
it.
Yes. Okay.
Claudia, we would like to listen to you because you are kind of a specialist. This is your topic, right? This is you love this topic, so yeah. We would like your input here.
Well, I agree. I totally agree with Ruben. And when I think about inclusion, I think about the classroom where everyone can learn, not just the ones that are following the teacher, not just the ones that need a little bit more scaffolding, or the ones that, need a different challenge. Just everyone, okay? And we teachers need to find the way to teach all these different students, okay? So that we can have a classroom where everyone can participate, everyone can learn, everyone can access knowledge and make progress. And I think in this aspect, teacher agency is key, is very important, because when teachers have agency, they can look at these different students, they can look at their backgrounds, their interests, their rhythm of working, the way they learn, and they can adapt what they do so that every student can access learning. I'm not talking about, well, if you have 30 students, have 30 different ways of teaching. But generally, you do have certain groups within a classroom. And I think that if you can find a way in which our students are motivated to learn and can access learning, well, that's a win-win for us as teachers and for our students as well. And post method invites us to go away from this one method that will work for everyone. We know that one method and one way of teaching doesn't work for everyone.
I'm sorry, and just to say something, this is going back to what Pablo mentioned at the very beginning of our talk, is this eclectic view, right, of teaching.
Yes, exactly. So in this post method era, we encourage teachers to design tasks, projects, learning experiences that really respond to those real students that we have in our classrooms. And sometimes, it may mean, slowing down a lesson, or rethinking a text, or creating different ways in which our students can engage with something, or giving them choices, okay, in which they can make their learning and their thinking visible, as Paul says. And I think that these small decisions that we make every day are where equity begins. But it's a completely different frame of mind. It's a different way of seeing what's happening in the classrooms, okay? In practice, I think that inclusion is these pedagogical choices that we make every single day, right?
Okay.
It's interesting because when you mentioned this question of how students work, and you know that now those students below 15 are called the Generation Alpha. And the whole mindset of Generation Alphas has changed neurolinguistically. And it's being studied in these days because they have a completely different neuronal mapping. And it makes our job more difficult to include all these students, in the sense that Ruben mentioned before. It's not just putting students together under one same roof, but to cater for each of them in terms of what they need. But then we have a tool that we are learning now how to explore, and that is the AI, right? That AI help us. I know there are many and very different reactions and stances towards AI. We like it, we don't like it. It's good, it's not good. They'll cheat, they won't. Okay.
Okay, let's probably. I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah. So
only one thing. Another promise for our audience. Let's go deeper, right? With into EI in July. I mean, finish your thought now, but let's continue, right? For July, we need to talk about EI too.
Yeah, the thing is,
Mariana's just clapping, right? She's very eager to participate.
Right. So the thing is that if we're going to talk about a teacher and students who are able to revise and modify their mindsets, then we might consider that using the capabilities that the AI implies might help us also personalize the learning experience in such a way that everybody will be actually included in it. It is a tiny bit early, perhaps, to truly appreciate the advantages that we might derive from this tool. But a teacher who is a keen observer, a teacher who is a keen observer revises his practices and looks around and will surely find their way into discovering those advantages.
Okay. No, I was just thinking about EI, which is a very, it's a very interesting topic. Another topic, another issue that we really need to discuss, debate, think about. I think that this is a kind of a very profound note for this initial exchange. But if we start talking about EI now, we will not finish today. So let's see if I can kind of sum up before, because you know what I forgot. I need to be honest, but I forgot to read the chat because I was so concentrated on the talk that I forgot to read the chat. So this is what I'm going to do right now. But let's see, we've been talking, or we passed from a human ecology of the classroom, right, to the digital frontier of AI. We've seen today that being an English teacher in times of uncertainty isn't about having a fixed compass, if we return to the metaphor of the cartography, right? But it's about having the courage to draw the map while we are walking the terrain, right, in the middle of the journey. So we moved from agency as a professional stance through exploratory action research as our investigative tool to a post-method approach that honors the unique mountain, desert, coral reef, jungle, right, of every classroom. So let me check now the chat, if I can do this. Let's see if I can read the chat in here. There are a lot of, but there are not many questions, right? So does somebody want to make, I mean, Irina, who comes from Santa Fe, but there are no questions, there are no comments. So let's open the mics, right? Let's open the mics and see if there are comments you want to make, some queries. We are here to discuss, to debate with you. We have some minutes, right, before the closure of this session. So if somebody, or does somebody want to ask, I'd like to know, Marta, right? Marta said, I'd like to know if the topics presented today, such as teacher, researcher, teacher agency, are related to an author in order to investigate later. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So I leave it to you, my colleagues, right?
Yes, well, in relation to teacher research, we can mention Richard Smith, Paula Rebollero, well, Mariana Serra, myself as authors of some chapters, Anders, Kenan Dikilitas, for example, yes?
Yes.
Seren Tuyan,
there is, Turkey. Sorry, Ruben, there is, I think, I don't know, Paul or Claudia, tell me or remind me, was it last year or the year before last that we had a chat with Paula Rebolledo?
2 years ago, Anna.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Yes.
So this should be in YouTube too.
The video
right?
is on the channel. Ruben, it's on the Dirección General de Cultura y Educación channel.
Yes, YouTube as Ruben mentioned, right? Richard Smith, right? And Paula and Mariana. I don't know if Mariana Serra is still here.
She is.
She's a colleague. She's one of Mariana's. Would you like to say hello to us and tell us a little? You can tell us a little bit what you've done.
Hello, everyone. I've been taking lots of notes, and yes, it's very interesting. Danger. Yes, and I was just writing in the chat that I loved the way in which you connected all these key topics. So congratulations. Yes, and I'm looking forward to the following seminars, webinars, whatever you're going to organize in July. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So much.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Mariana. Okay, are there any more comments?
I'm looking for the link to the video so that I can share it.
Okay, all right. You're welcome, Marta. Okay,
Yes.
and then
I have posted the link to MentorNet. There you can find all books, bibliography, videos, yes, and even conferences, international conferences like the coming conference of IHFL Teacher Research Online, which is next, well, on the 14th and 15th of March. Yeah.
okay. Irina also posted a comment saying that she studied post-method pedagogy while she was at the teacher training institution. It says we watched some videos about Kumaravaravelu, right, talking about the difference between post-method and eclecticism, right, for example. And that's great. And it's wonderful to know that at institutions we are in that stage, right?
Yes, and let me add that those who are interested also may join every year we facilitate together with Mariana Serra as part of this international community a free workshop on teacher research for professional development. That is the name. That is end of September and October during 5 weeks. We guide participants throughout the teacher process stages, and it's very rewarding for all participants because it's for teachers themselves, not for researchers, and for any teacher, any level, even kindergarten could be, and also because it's an opportunity to meet colleagues from different parts of the world. There are participants from from Peru, from Turkey, from Nepal, from India, from Uzbekistan, from Japan. Well, so it's a multicultural workshop as well. Yes.
Very interesting.
So you are all invited. You can find information in the MentorNet website.
Okay. So do you think that, we can kind of bring this session to a close if nobody else has comments?
Yes, we check one final word. I've shared 2 links. One is the link to the interview with Pablo Rogero that we had 2 years ago, I think. And the other one is a link to a talk by Pablo Rogero at the IHF from Liverpool 2019, where she speaks about teacher empowerment. So probably those 2 materials will be a good starting point for those who want to know more about this.
Good. Thank you. And Mariana is also reinforcing Ruben's invitation to the teacher research groups, right? So that's great.
Oh, great! I hadn't seen that. Thank you.
It's there, right? So I want to thank you, right, Claudia, Paul, and Ruben, for sharing your expertise, your passion, right, and for putting up with me. And most importantly, I want to thank you all of the audience, all of our colleagues, for joining us in this exercise of observing reflexively. I guess that if there is one thought to take back to our classrooms tomorrow, let it be this. We are not just implementers of a curriculum, as Claudia stated, right? We are researchers, we are designers, and we are agents of change. The uncertainty we face in modern education shouldn't be a barrier, right? Let's take it as the empty space on the map where our best innovations are born. So let's keep building these cartographies, one situative, inclusive, and informed decision at a time. Pablo always said little steps or baby steps, right? So thank you for being part of this CCC at UNIPE community. I hope you can join us in July. And I would like to send a big hug and kiss to everybody, right? Thank you very much.